The following is a presentation of the Mat Talk Podcast Network.
You've always got time for Short Time.
Hey, it's Mario Lopez.
David Taylor.
Brent Metcalf. Johnny Hendricks. Tony Ramos. Bubba J.
Mike Golick.
Matthew Modine.
The one and only Chael Sonnen, and you are listening to the one and only Short Time Wrestling Podcast by the often imitated and never duplicated Jason Bryant.
It's a Short Time Wrestling Podcast from my stomping grounds, my old stomping grounds, the Hampton Coliseum in Hampton, Virginia, as we're getting set up for the 37th annual Virginia Duels. 5 divisions, 2 college, 3 high school. We got 20 colleges in the place, 48 high schools. So I'm going to just start walking around the Hampton Coliseum and asking people what their favorite Virginia Duels memory is. I'm going to start right here with Tournament Director Mike McCormick, who you may or may not know as a dentist or an NCAA wrestling official. He doesn't like really publicizing the latter. But, Mike, you've been at this thing since its inception, basically. What's your favorite Virginia Duels memory?
Wow. On the spot, my favorite might have to be when we used to have the parties here after the tournament.
That's a good one.
And I saw Frank Lapoli take down Casey Graham for money.
All right, that was one. I didn't know where you were going with the parties thing. Okay, now from
about 4 in the morning.
Yeah, from a competitive standpoint, though, I mean, because you wrestled in this thing as an athlete, both in high school and college. What's your favorite memory as a competitor?
Yeah, beating the defending state champ when I was in high school was pretty cool because I hadn't seen him yet. And so long ago, I don't remember how our team did. Honestly, God, that's 30-some years ago. As an administrator running the event, last year being able to give my dad the Grand Marshal was pretty cool. That was real touching to be able to share that with my mom and dad. And he was one of the handful of guys that, came up with the idea of doing a dual meet tournament 37 years ago. And so for him to be recognized as a Grand Marshal was pretty neat.
What's the coolest thing that you remember about the duels in terms of what it's brought to the world of wrestling?
Well, it brought a new type of event, maybe a new type of competition. Before the duels, there were not any dual meet team advancement events, and so it brought a whole new dynamic to the way you see tournaments, as opposed to being individual. Another thing that's super neat for kids is the high school kids are right next to the college kids, and they get to see the work that it takes and how hard those guys work to be successful. And then the little kids that are here watching get to see the high school kids, and the high school kids get to watch the college kids. So that's a neat dynamic.
I'm going to tell a story about that type of thing happening. It was and it wasn't a local team. It wasn't our alma mater, Pocosin, but it was Virginia Tech was wrestling on a mat in the National College Division, right next to Grundy, which was wrestling in the National High School Division. Scott Justice is wrestling for Virginia Tech. At the same time, his brother PJ was wrestling for Grundy. So that's one of those cooler things. It's like you got brothers wrestling next to each other, college and high school. I mean, those type of things happen here, and they really can't happen a lot of other places.
Yeah, that's certainly obviously can happen at this event. And 37 years later, there are too many memories to list. It's just a homecoming for anyone that's a wrestling junkie on the peninsula, or really in the state of Virginia for that matter. So it's nice to see everybody. People show up, willing to help, willing to volunteer, do whatever it takes to make this event great.
Now here with Bill Grubs as we are the calm before the storm. That is the Virginia Duels. Bill's been a part of the Peninsula Wrestling Association and the Virginia Wrestling Association for a number of years now, and we're asking people here that are involved with the duels, what's your favorite Virginia Duels memory so far?
I think although I'm at PWA all the time, I'm not part of Pocosin, and watching them 2 years ago win the black and blue division was extremely exciting, especially when I've been around all these kids since they were little, and it was very extremely exciting to watch that happen.
Now, when you first got into the Virginia Duels a number of years ago, what did you know about the event and the club itself that said, I want to be part of this?
In 1996, I had a friend of mine that said, hey, I got a couple floor passes for the duels. I wrestled in high school in Nebraska, and I hadn't been involved in wrestling at all since then. And he said, hey, come and watch the duels. And I came, and it was amazing. I was just couldn't believe it was just great. And I had the bug again. I was hooked. A few years later, we had our own children. I happened to move over to the peninsula and didn't live in Poquoson, but got involved with PWA, and it's just started there, and it's been great.
96, Al Verdi would have still been on the microphone in that era, and you hear the red, white, and blue will fall. You'd see all the greats. What was it about the atmosphere here that kind of gave you that bug? Was it the whole presentation and everything that goes along with this event?
It was just everything, the whole package, the colleges, the high school. I had never been around a big college tournament, and it was just amazing.
So from a leadership perspective now, when the kids get ready to go and they know that they're going from the youth into the high school and they're going to wrestle in this tournament, no matter what high school they're at and they're in this tournament locally, this is a big deal for them. This is just as big as the state tournament for some of these kids. In some cases, the kids that won't even ever make the state tournament, this is the biggest thing they'll ever wrestle in.
Yeah, that is correct. Kids, especially local kids, they come. We have a youth tournament, a national tournament, and a rookie tournament. They come out here wrestling in that tournament when they're, young, and their goal is to try to make the big show. And you're right. This may be the biggest tournament they are ever in. So it's great.
If you were to say any word of advice to somebody that's never come to this tournament, they're just like, I'm thinking about it, I just never do it. What would make you tell somebody you've got to come to this tournament to watch it?
Just the whole atmosphere is just electric, especially when you get into the finals. I mean, just the best of the best. These guys have been in here slugging it out, and they're out here in the finals, and it's just, most of the finals end up to be 1-point matches or tied and come down to criteria, and it is just fantastic.
Continuing on with our Virginia Duels memories here with Powhatan, Virginia High School head coach John Tanaka. We go way back. You were a rival high school of mine at Precious Tab back in the day, as the nickname goes. But, John, we're asking people around the duels in the Coliseum, what was your favorite Virginia Duels memory as a competitor and maybe as you got in your career as a coach? First, let's talk about your competitive career. What do you remember most about the Virginia Duels?
Junior year, wrestled Ocean Lakes in the black and blue finals. I just remember a match started kind of rough. Came out kind of banging heads. I ended up winning the match, and then we ended up winning the tournament, winning the black and blue division that year. Literally, it's one of those things where on Facebook, every once in a while, you'll see a teammate pop up and find their 1996 black and blue division championship sweatshirt, and it's always just something that kind of connects us all throughout the years. As a college wrestler wrestling for Longwood, it was just one of those things where it was always an event we look forward to. And now as a high school coach, it's another thing where it's like our kids, it's exciting for me to watch our kids get excited and get ready to come for the week. And it's always a fun time of the year for us to come back here and compete.
Yeah, and we're talking about Powhatan, a school that didn't even have a wrestling program up until maybe 10, 15 years ago. When we were in school, Powhatan was single A. They had no wrestling team. And then you grew up coming through the PWA. Your parents worked this tournament for a long time. What did it mean for you to bring Powhatan back or to this tournament for the first time, knowing that this is really where, when you were a PWA kid, the dream was to get here to wrestle in high school and then to wrestle in college?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, it's very nostalgic for me. Obviously, running into people like you, Ben Summerlin, Aaron Bradley, guys I wrestled with in college. For the high school kids, it's just one of those things where you just want them to have the same experiences as you had. There's nothing like this tournament, in my opinion. It's a good, pre-tune-up for states. And for a lot of our kids, be able to wrestle in a mat, next to a UVA or a Tech or Old Dominion, and to have that experience is it's immeasurable. For a lot of these kids, they're not going to wrestle in college, so this is going to be one of those things that hopefully they remember, as long as they're alive, just like me and my tab teammates do.
One thing that this tournament has been known for years is, one, the weird-looking falls, like they're from my alma mater. You see Decker go, I don't know what that is. But, yeah, I didn't teach that. But it was a hospitality room. And your mom, I remember when I was first starting, she was working in a hospitality room. It's a crew of volunteers. Why is this the best hospitality room in the country?
Graham and Rollins, man. I still go to Graham and Rollins when I'm here. My mom's like, you got to go run down to Ham Seafood Market, and that's where we get our seafood from. My dad used to work the weigh-in rooms with Jacob Inge's dad, Bruce Templeton, Drew Templeton's dad. So it's
there's a name I haven't heard in a while. Drew Templeton, wow.
And he's still living in Tab. I haven't talked to him in a while, but, it's just, it's one of those things where it's just cool that you have that environment where, my parents would come and do, my dad did weigh-in rooms all the way up and through college. My mom did hospitality room all the way through college. It's just a really cool thing for the people in this area. you know, the Tabs, the Pecosins, the Yorks, you know, teams that we've all grown up battling with. To see those parents year after year, you know when you come to duels, you're going to see certain people.
You're going to see Hunter Moore's dad, you know?
Exactly.
Right behind us.
you know, like when I go to the weigh-in room, I'm going to see those people every year. So it's kind of cool that, you know, we have that relationship, and it's like I said, it's different for the PWA kids that have grown up wrestling here. You know, I mean, it's different. You just, you know, I don't know if our kids have the same feel, but like I said, every year that we come back, they're a little bit more jacked up. They're a little bit more ready to compete. So, you know, like I said, it's one of those things. I feel fortunate enough to bring our kids here and be able to compete and be able to give them this experience. I just hope that they don't take it for granted. They understand that this is a very special thing. You know, especially the kids like us that grew up in this area. This was our thing, man. We knew first weekend, second weekend in January, this is where we're going to be, and we were excited about this as much as we were excited about going to states.
Yeah, but here they don't say winter about peeing.
Absolutely not. But we do have Ken Berger, so as long as we got Kenny Berger, we'll be all right.
Finishing up with the first round black and blue victory as we're talking a little history here at the Virginia Duels. The Great Bridge head coach, Matt Small, just the most glorious presence I've ever seen in my life. How's it going, man?
It's going great, man. You know, it's always good to be at the Virginia Duels. I've been here as a competitor in high school for Great Bridge. I've been here as a competitor for Old Dominion, and I've coached here for Great Bridge under Steve and Wayne, and I've coached Grassfield here. I've coached Cox High School here, and now I'm back at Great Bridge where I belong. And, you know, the Virginia Duels, it's always like a pilgrimage. We enjoy coming back here, meeting old friends such as yourself, and competing hard. You know, it's very competitive.
It's one thing as we all kind of grow up together and we realize, you know, we're joking around in college. All of a sudden, we have to adult. We have to be adults, and now we're coaching and doing things. And you look around, like you're in the Southeastern District. There's Motley from Old Dominion. There's Summerlin from, you know, my old roommate. There's Filson and Whitby. All these guys that you see that we're generationally coaching. How important is it for events like this and sports like wrestling that provide you guys as educators to really carry on the tradition of wrestling and teach the kids that you get a lot of first-year kids that have never wrestled before. You've got kids that have been wrestling their entire lives. I mean, teaching is really the profession that helps you teach wrestling.
Yeah, well, I'll say this. You know, we've been fortunate this year where we've made a pretty good connection with our football program. And so, like, my 182-pounder, my 220-pounder, those are first-year guys. They've only been wrestling for probably 5 weeks, you know, coming off a football season. And it's the one thing that I tell them coming into this tournament is you're going to see what it's all about. You're going to see the showcase. You're going to see the top college guys in the country. You know, hey, like, that's a 141-pounder in college. And they're like, no way. And I'm like, yeah, like, you know, that's the real deal here. And, you know, for them to get the exposure and to see it, and even if for the kid like them that the wrestling career is short-lived, they're actually doing us a favor, and it's a testimony to them as competitors, because, you know, they're naturally competitors more in football than in wrestling. But to give to our sport, I mean, that's great. As far as us as coaches coming back, you know, I've always, as an educator, you know, I'm a teacher first, to be able to give back to the sport of wrestling, and especially to an event that has been around for so many years, it just means a lot. It means a lot for our program, because our program's been involved, I think, every year except one. And for me, I've been involved in it every year I've wrestled. So, you know, it's always good to give back, especially you give back to an event that gives so much to our area. You know, because Virginia, you know, we're good in wrestling, but we're not. You wouldn't consider us like the hotbed of national wrestling. But this is a national event, and it holds its own. I think across all levels. You know, the youth event that they're going to have on Sunday here. You got the colleges. You got multiple levels of colleges, and you got multiple levels of high school. I don't think there's another event around the country that could give the testimony of wrestling such as that. You know what I mean? So it's a big deal for us. We love it.
Now, you've been here a long, long time. I think your number of Virginia Duels has probably outnumbered mine, actually. But when you go back and think about the memories, what are some of your better memories, the things that you will always remember? It's like, man, remember that time at the Duels? That you have to tell that story no matter what. If you say Virginia Duels, the first, you know, great memory that maybe comes to your mind as a competitor.
Well, as a competitor, probably the memory that brings back the the most is probably not the best experience.
Well, if it involves beating Pocosin, I don't want to hear about it.
Yeah, no. I'll tell you what, I do remember Jimmy Jones and Joey Guth going at it, and Joey had a tight front headlock on Jones. We ended up winning that one, and I remember the epic Keaton-Carl Perry match. Like, that was great. You know, Keaton, what was he, a nose guard in football?
125-pound nose guard.
Yeah. But for me as a competitor, and I think this is where, you know, this is what I tell my kids. I said, you know, wrestling's an individual sport, but there's a very important team concept. In the Virginia Duels, only one name advances, Great Bridge. And it takes all 24 people that weigh in to carry that name. And so it brings me back to me. You know, I was a 192-pound heavyweight in high school. You know, I remember a heated match against Parkersburg South where, you know, I was that guy that had to go out there and not give up the points. And it didn't go my way. And I didn't do my job for the team. And that's something that lives with me. You know, as a 39-year-old adult, you know, I'm supposed to get over those things. But that's maybe why I'm coaching at the Virginia Duels, you know. But, you know, that important team concept, like you can't get that, you know, in a quad meet on a Wednesday night or like a single duel tournament. It doesn't have the same impact as being under the lights of the Coliseum around all the different teams. It's just a phenomenal event. Yeah.
Here in the Hampton Coliseum, running into my old, I was on the team. That's about it. This guy actually did a lot of wrestling, but one of my old teammates, Jared Herr, from the era when the Bull Islanders of Pocosin kind of ruled the roost in the peninsula area, and we're talking about the Virginia Duels, the memories, and what it means. And, you know, when you grow up on the peninsula, Virginia Duels is always kind of you circle your calendar for it. What were your earliest memories of the Virginia Duels before you got the opportunity to compete in this event when you were a freshman? And I'll get to that story very soon.
Well, you know, my first time actually wrestling here at the Coliseum was when I was in Youth League, when I was wrestling in the Peninsula, wrestling against one of my future teammates, Brad Fitzpatrick. And that led into some of the duel matches that were here and advertising for coming out and seeing the duels. So right before we moved up to Coaston, those are kind of things that kind of spurred our interest into these bigger team format duel matches.
So the story is, people that have followed me a little bit, they know that January 95 was my first Virginia Duels. You were a freshman in high school wrestling, I believe 135 or 35. You had a rough weekend that weekend, but I might have. But thing is, you were part of the single biggest win in Pocosin wrestling history. Tell me a little bit about what you remember about 27-26 over McEachern.
Well, it was actually one of my first varsity matches. My teammate Rob Green came down with mono, which gave me an opportunity to jump into the starting lineup as a freshman. And, you know, we came in with not a lot of high expectations for a match going up against a ranked opponent like that. And, you know, we all just kind of clicked that day, and even the freshmen chipped in and contributed to the win, and it's pretty exciting.
Yeah, I say that match is really what set my career, because that's what got me hooked. And you were part of that team, and we got to know each other over years. And actually, my first state tournament, your parents, Rick and Rhonda, gave me a ride to the Salem. And I shared a bed with your younger brother, Josh, and then basically the rest from Salem's history. But you haven't been here in a long time. Since 1999. What's it mean to walk back into these doors of the Hampton Coliseum again? You know, you're a parent now. You're getting that wrestling itch again. You said on Facebook that you put the shoes on for the first time in a long time. What's it like being back here?
It's really surreal. Seeing a lot of old faces, the old smells of the whole place, just the excitement of big team duel matches. It's been a long time, and certainly I've missed it, but I didn't realize how much I missed it till I walked through and saw everything going on. That sense of competition and the teams and just the core values of wrestling and coming out and competing every day. That's something you don't get as an adult in most cases. So it's really cool to be out here. I'm excited that my nephew's getting into the program, and hopefully he can continue the tradition of our family.
So I'm going to ask you what your favorite Virginia Duels wrestling moment is, but I'm probably going to steal it from you when I set this up. I got a hunch it might have been semifinals 1997 Virginia Duels against a school named Great Bridge.
Absolutely. That's something that actually has already come up several times today, just looking back at those memories is coming out and wrestling at such a high level against a team like Great Bridge, who was at the top of their game at the time. That was so awesome. It's kind of anticlimactic going into the finals and winning that, because we had already accomplished something that had never been done. And just looking back at that, it's just unreal how that turned out that weekend.
Yeah, I mean, plus you beat a nationally ranked guy named Steve Sakis at dual meet too, and that was one where we're looking at it. I said, yeah, Jared can win this match, and Coach Ruff looks at me kind of weird. He knew a lot more about wrestling than I did. I was like, oh, Jared's good. He can win this match. You go out there and wrestle amazing, and Billy comes and goes, Jared Hurd wrestled the match of his life. And that was a key match that really swung the momentum. I mean, what's it like when you beat a big, good, super, basically a guy that was expected to mudhole you, and then you beat him in an atmosphere like this?
Well, I went into it not knowing much about it because, I'm not a big wrestling aficionado. And I didn't.
There's no internet back then either.
Yeah, so you didn't know too much about all your opponents. I knew that he was a great bridge and he was going to be a real good wrestler. I just wanted to go out and do the best I could against a great team and not let my team down. And I wrestled a great match and come out on top. And ultimately, that's one of the things that helped propel us to the win.
Then we beat Mount Anthony Union. I say we because that was my senior year. Again, I wasn't in the lineup. Probably because I would have been one of the guys that didn't win if I was. But looking at the course back of that team, Mount Anthony Union's won like every state tournament in Vermont since then. Their coach, Scott Legacy's now a college coach up in Vermont. And the guy you wrestled in that dual meet was second in the world team trials in Greco-Roman, not that, a couple years ago. So everything kind of just runs together. But, Jared, it's good to see you back here at the Coliseum. It's been a long time since we talked. But, thanks for giving us some insight on the old days for you.
I appreciate it, and we all in the wrestling community really appreciate everything you've done over the last 20-plus years to really bring the sport to the forefront.
This show is part of the Matt Talk Podcast Network. For more wrestling podcasts, head over to MattTalkOnline.com.